All right, let's get into it. We're going to explore the incredible history of Finland, a country that was, you could say, literally forged between the great powers of the East and the West. So let's start with something very recent. In 2023, Finland made a choice that honestly changed the entire security landscape of Europe. It joined NATO. But a decision like that doesn't just happen overnight. It's the result of a long and often really tough history. So to really get why they made that move, we've got to go way back. How does a nation, constantly squeezed between giant, powerful empires, manage to build such a strong and unique identity of its own? Well, that's the big question we're going to tackle. And our story doesn't start with kings or kingdoms or big battles. Nope, it starts with the land itself, emerging from a deep freeze and giving rise to a surprisingly advanced ancient culture. Think about this. Around 11,000 years ago, the last ice age finally ends, and the land that we now call Finland literally rises up from the melting ice. As soon as it was habitable, the first people started to arrive, moving in from the south and the southeast. And these first inhabitants were incredibly smart. I mean, check this out. This is the Antrea net. It dates all the way back to 8300 BC, and it's the oldest fishing net ever discovered anywhere in the world. It just goes to show you that these early hunter-gatherers were absolute masters of their environment. So, as we move into the Stone Age, we start to see these really distinct cultures pop up. This amazing axe, for example, is from the Kam ceramic culture. These folks were known for their unique pottery and had these massive trade networks. It's proof that long before Finland was even a word, a unique identity was already starting to form right here. Okay, so this early culture is bubbling along, and then we get to the chapter that would really define Finland's place in the world, being caught between two absolute giants, the Swedish Empire to the west and the Russian Empire to the east. And I mean, for over 600 years, that's more than 6 centuries, starting in the 1200s, Finland wasn't just a neighbor to Sweden, it was Sweden. This huge period of being part of the Swedish Kingdom would shape its destiny forever. You can really see this incredible tug-of-war of influences here. Sweden pulled Finland into the Western world, bringing in Western laws, the Lutheran Church, and making Swedish the language of power. But then, in 1809, everything changes. Finland becomes part of Russia. Now, the Russians let it be an autonomous Grand Duchy, and here's the wild part. It's under Russian rule that this powerful sense of being Finnish really ignites, leading to cultural treasures like their national epic, the Kalevala. And you can literally see this split right here. On one side, you've got a Swedish rune stone, one of the oldest documents to ever even mention Finland, and on the other, a map that shows Finland basically as a buffer zone, a tiny strip of land next to the massive Russian Empire. Two totally different worlds, both leaving their mark on one nation. And this really gets to the heart of it. That time under Russia in the 1800s was this incredible cultural explosion. There was a real fear of being totally swallowed up by Russia. And that sparked this movement to figure out, okay, who are we? That's what led to the Kalevala. It was pieced together from ancient folklore, and it was so important because it gave the Finnish people a founding story that wasn't Swedish and it wasn't Russian. It was 100% their own. So you can feel it, right? All this cultural and political pressure is just building and building, and it's about to explode. This next chapter is all about the dramatic, violent, and ultimately triumphant birth of an independent Finland. And then comes the moment. The year is 1917. The Russian Empire is collapsing in the chaos of revolution, and Finland seizes its chance. It declares independence. But, declaring you're free and actually being free, well, those are two totally different things. The brand new nation was almost immediately thrown into a crisis that would tear it right down the middle. Just months after independence, the Finnish Civil War breaks out. It was a vicious fight. On one side, you had the Reds, socialists who were backed by the new Soviet Russia. On the other, the Whites, conservatives supported by Germany. In the end, the Whites won, and that victory was huge. It basically decided once and for all that Finland's future was going to be as a Western-style democracy. So Finland survives this terrible internal conflict, but there's no time to breathe, because the young nation is about to face its greatest test yet, a fight for its very survival against its massive neighbor to the east during World War II. Finland had to fight not one, but two unbelievably brutal wars against the Soviet Union. First was the legendary Winter War. This was a true David versus Goliath story, where the tiny Finnish army somehow held off a gigantic Soviet invasion and just shocked the entire world. That was followed by what's called the Continuation War, where Finland, trying to get its lost territory back, actually joined Germany in invading the USSR. Now, Finland paid a terrible price. It lost a huge chunk of its land, including a big part of the region of Karelia. But, and this is so important, unlike so many other countries on the Soviet border, Finland was never occupied. It made it through the war with its independence and its democracy still standing. Okay, so let's jump forward now, past the smoke of the war. This brings us to the modern era, and we're going to trace Finland's journey from this scarred but tough survivor to a prosperous, modern, and now fully allied Western nation. What happens after the war is just remarkable. Finland doesn't just rebuild, it totally transforms. In the 70s, its economy just boomed, and it became one of the richest countries in the world. Then, in 1995, it joins the European Union, adopts the euro a few years later. Each step was a step further west. And it all leads up to that historic decision in 2023 to join NATO, a direct result of renewed Russian aggression. So when you really step back and look at Finland's entire story, what you see is a masterclass in resilience. It's a nation that was shaped by its geography, tested by horrible wars, but always strengthened by this unique spirit. And now it's firmly anchored in the West as a member of NATO. Its long history of navigating that tricky space between East and West has entered a totally new era. The only question now is, what will this next chapter hold?